Hi, I'm Simon Kensington-Fellows, and this is a mini audit for David Lee, the wedding DJ. Now, just that we can keep on track, I have a notepad file here. So this is the kind of agenda, if you like, for the next 20 to 30 minutes, I guess. And I'm just going to go through and look at these 5 areas. So we're going to be looking at what search terms are we using, are we targeting the correct keywords. Then we're going to look at some on-page optimization. So now that we know what keywords our prospective customers are using to try and find us, we need to make sure that we're actually telling Google that those are the keywords that we want to show up for. And then we're going to look at our site structure, making sure that we've got the correct pages on a website. Those pages will go a long way to demonstrating trust to Google. And then looking at the brand entity. This is something that's becoming more and more important as more and more sites go online. Google's always favoured brands, if you like, which is why things like Amazon and such like, some of the big directories, the Yelps of this world, why they show up so predominantly in search. And so one of the things that we need to start doing as local businesses is to try and stand out from the other local businesses by adopting the same sorts of practices that big brands do, and I'll go into that a little bit later on. Then the last part that we'll look at is site speed and how fast is your site. And one of the most important areas is the time to first byte, first paint time, those kind of things, and that really is more down to the hosting that you've got the website on, rather than some of the things that people tend to think of, like how big the image is, that kind of stuff. So we'll be looking at that as we go through. So I think the first place that any audit should start off really is what the user is asking themselves, are they in the right place when they find your site? Now, bearing in mind that for most business to customer B2C businesses, a lot of people are going to be using mobile devices. So how well does our site look on a mobile device? Is it easy to read? Are the buttons easy to press? The menus, are they easy to navigate? And Google is now judging our website rankings on how well our site performs on the mobile version of the site. So if you have a website that is responsive, that is, that resizes, collapses down and looks good on a smartphone, and not all smartphones are 6 or 7 inch screens, a lot of them are still 4-inch screens, and so a site needs to look good and load fast on a 3G signal. So we'll be looking at that. And so when you come to any site, there's 3 questions that a SEO friend of mine has taught for a long time, and that is, what is it, what's it about, and what's in it for me, which really leads to the visitor being able to know that they're in the right place. So what is it? Well, it's a website about a wedding DJ, which is good because we can see that wedding DJ David Lee. What's in it for me? Don't know. There's not really a good call to action, a good clear call to action. These benefits is kind of lost a little bit in the flow, so maybe these can be made more obvious. These benefits help you stand out from your competition. Great to have customer reviews here, although of course anybody could write this sort of stuff. So if you can pull in reviews directly from sites such as Google Reviews or Yelp or wherever else you might have reviews, Facebook reviews, then they tend to be more believable because they're not so easily fabricated, although of course with Photoshop you can do all sorts. We've got a price and availability button, which is about the best of a call to action, and when I clicked on that it took me to an external page, I think, off the site, and there weren't any prices as far as I could see, so maybe that's a bit misleading, might be frustrating for some people if they're looking for prices and they've actually got to contact you to find them. But as I say, that may well have been my mistake for not seeing them. So yeah, still not seeing them. So if the call to action is prices and availability, then it would probably be a good idea to perhaps give, if you're not keen on giving exact prices, because you know each wedding is different in that respect, there may be just some examples of packages so that people have got a broad idea of what they might be expected to pay. I know from working in the wedding band space that a lot of those sites do actually put up packages, so it's fairly easy to compare one package to the other. Of course there are swings and roundabouts. If you're an awesome salesperson and you can close the calls that you get, then perhaps you don't need to worry about the availability, or rather not having the pricing on there. And that's just one caveat. Anything that I say here, obviously I don't know how well your site is performing, so I'm looking at it strictly from a conversions perspective and an SEO perspective, and that will lead me to one of the interesting things that I found, which can be fairly frustrating about local business websites and local business SEO, and that is that despite anything that I might say, and I have found quite a few issues on the site from a technical perspective, the site is ranking well for you. It's ranking number 2, your homepage ranking number 2 for your primary search term there, and it's ranking for the other 2, top of first page, bottom of second page, and for this other last term here, the Northwest, your homepage is ranking 4th and you're number 1 in the maps. So obviously the site is pulling in traffic, and it's ranking well despite the issues that it's got. So whether that means that unshackling those issues we can get these to rank even better, certainly these 2 pages would be an interesting thing to look at. So let's get into some of those issues. One of the issues is around your TTPS, your SSL certificate that you've got. It's great that you've got one. Having an SSL, being able to have HTTPS, is a ranking factor. Google has said as much, so it's good that you've got it there. One of the issues that you experience if you don't have a valid certificate is that you get a query popping up and a warning popping up in both Firefox and Chrome saying that the site might be unsafe, which is a real conversion killer to people who aren't overly familiar with these things. Now, one of the issues that you've got is that some of the content on the page, because we don't have a green padlock or a padlock at all showing up here, so it would seem that the certificate hasn't been set up correctly, or there is content on here which is linking to unsecured content, which is often the case if there are links out to other places, links to non-HTTPS sites, images that are stored on non-HTTPS sites, that kind of thing. So you haven't got the full benefit. Up here we still have got a type of warning, but the bigger issue I think than that is the fact that the site isn't redirecting properly. Now if you put in HTTP and your domain name, it should redirect to the HTTPS version, and there should only be one version of your site. I couldn't understand initially why there were so many pages indexed on your site, and there's, I think, nearly 700 pages, and and there's double those when you consider that there's another lot of pages that are HTTP. So Google has got in its head that there's two versions of this site. There's the HTTP version and the HTTPS. So normally when you set up the SSL, particularly on WordPress, you can use a plugin like Really Simple SSL, and that will handle the redirect so that it automatically redirects over to the correct version. You can use the HTTP access file as well to do that. So that certainly is something that needs looking at, because one of the issues that has come out from that is that you've got a lot of duplicate content on the site, and you've got over here, this is Sitebulb. I think you can get a free trial for this if you want to. So we've got where is it? URL as a duplicate title and meta descriptions, and elsewhere we've got other duplicate content, and that is because of the HTTP not redirecting properly to the HTTPS. So that needs looking at. These dots, they redirect fine. There's no problem at all there. But as I say, the HTTPS. But I think we've laboured that point. So that would be definitely worth checking. And theoretically, it should be a fairly simple way of doing that through your site. And then the other thing to remember when you've got an SSL certificate and you've changed to HTTPS is to make sure that you've updated your Google Analytics and your Google Search Console to make sure that in Google Analytics you've added the HTTPS as your preferred site. Otherwise you might find more than likely that the tracking of the page views and the activity on your site through Search Console, through Analytics, may not be as accurate because it's trying to track the wrong site, and especially here as the site isn't redirecting properly either, so that may well be causing you some issues with the credibility of the analytics. And then with Search Console, certainly with the new Search Console, it's a lot easier. So if you're using the new Search Console, then you just need to add the one domain, and you tell it what it is. In the old one, if you're still using the old Search Console, then you needed to add the 4 versions of your website, which was these 4 here, and then tell Search Console which was your number 1 site, your preferred domain. And then that way it would just work on those, tracking those numbers. So that's that. So I've got just looking at this, as I say, we've already been through here. There's not much I can say about it in respect of your main keyword because it's ranking second. I think if you wanted to rank number 1, and it may vary depending when you search and what device. I've searched on a desktop. Sometimes the mobile version is different. So if I say second and you're seeing it as number 1 or number 3 or number 2, whatever, is to look at tightening up this the content on here and making it more about the main term, which was wedding DJ in Manchester. So I'll go through some on-site stuff in a minute to show you where those need to be inserted into the page. And this, for example, where we've got wedding DJ Cheshire, which I think was ranking number 9, is that this wedding DJ Cheshire term only appears once on the page. And so when we're looking at the choice of keywords, we actually need to make sure that those keywords are on the page several times and in certain places. So I think the only place that it is on this page is on a title attribute on the photo here. so it doesn't appear anywhere else on the page. So there's definitely an opportunity, seeing as it's ranking already on page 1, tightening up the on page for this will definitely help with that one. So I want to just talk about now, going back to the agenda, if you like, is to look at, are we targeting the right keywords? And one of the first things I noticed was that wedding DJ Manchester, Cheshire, Lancashire, Northwest, they're very, very large areas, and so I don't know, and this is a question for you really from your experience, do people in Cheshire, when they're looking for a wedding DJ, bearing in mind how big it is, do they search for wedding DJ Cheshire? Or if they're in Chester, do they search for wedding DJ Chester, for example? So, you know, or wedding DJ Warrington or whatever. So there's some smaller but distinct areas making up those large counties. And one of the things that we can do with web pages quite quickly is to create a page that targets a specific area. So rather than just one page targeting Cheshire, we can we can build 10 pages. They don't have to be completely different, and we can target those individual areas, which may well bring up better or more search volume overall. Because one of the things that I noticed was that when I set my browser to be in Manchester and I just searched for wedding DJ, I wasn't finding the site ranking in the first 2 or 3 pages. So I wonder how many of those people in Manchester, for example, are just typing in wedding DJ or wedding DJ near me in their phones or whatever. So by having more pages that are targeting smaller areas, you're more likely to find that a page or a visitor is nearer that page. So you're opening up your opportunity for being found more. So when thinking about the search terms, thinking about, are they the best search terms? Are they the ones, not necessarily best for me as the business and what I think, but are they actually what people are searching? And there's a tool that you can use, a free plugin for Chrome called Keywords Everywhere. It's this little doofer up here. And when you install it, it's free to install. I think you just have to sign up for the API, self-explanatory, and then it will give you related keywords and the estimated volumes for those keywords. So we can see that wedding DJ Manchester has got approximately 210 monthly searches, but there are other related keywords here that have others. Now where they say 0, don't take that they don't have any searches, because they wouldn't be in here. These are pulled out from Google Instant Search, and that's or Instant Suggestion, and that's only comes from people actually putting stuff into the search engine. So, and then you've got another load of questions down here, and so when we look at Cheshire, we see that there's 110. Interestingly though, there isn't any other related things being pulled up here, so that either means it's not that there are other searches that aren't directly related to Cheshire, maybe targeting those smaller areas. So that would certainly be worth doing some research around. Weddings DJ Lancashire, 70 monthly search. Now it seems quite low for a county, so maybe that would suggest that people are searching without Lancashire as part of the search term, so they're searching for the niche rather than the niche plus city. So that would be worth doing some more research into, finding out exactly what it is that these people are searching for. And then I think the last one of the 4, so we've got Northwest here, again 70, and then we've got related searches here. And interestingly, this is the one where you're ranking number 1 in the maps pack. So yeah, that's what I would do there, is just to look at the keywords. Now this is a report from SEMrush, which is looking at your organic keywords. So these are the keywords that you're ranking for already. So when we look at all of the keywords, you'll see that there's quite a wide variety of branded ones, which is good, and other searches. But you can see here for some of the other ones that there's room for improvement on these. And things like wedding planner Lancashire. I don't know if you do wedding planning. I saw you found that you did have another site for your events site. And that's one of the things that I found, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about the site structure. But let's just talk about on page. If we go back to this example, when we're talking about making sure that we've got the right keywords in the right signal areas, we are talking about having let's just turn this on, about having the keywords and other related words in these main areas here. So the major signal zones. So the first and primary place that you want to have your main keyword is the URL. And so that's either as part of the domain or as a page that's on that domain. Now, running on from that, we really want to be targeting one keyword per page. And so things like wedding disco lights is a different search phrase to wedding DJs, and so there should be separate pages, and on those separate pages you don't want to talk about the other service, because what you don't want to do is give Google the opportunity to say, well, I've got 2 or 3 or more pages here and they're talking about lots of connected things, and I don't really know which is the best page to show. So either it won't show any, or it will just show them at a lower, both of them at a lower ranking. Whereas if you got rid of one of them, the other one would probably go up, because all of a sudden it's not sharing that ranking with another page. And that's what we call cannibalization, where you're cannibalizing your own search results. So you want to make sure that we have a clear plan of one main keyword per page, and that goes for location pages as well as for service pages. So the next important area is the page title, and often WordPress will make that an H1, so we'll bear that in mind when we look at the next important area. But for your page title, you want to have your main keyword at the front end of that page title. And when you're looking at branding, you really only want to have your brand on your home page or the location page that might be connected to a Google My Business profile. Other than that, you want to have the main keyword and a really good call to action that will attract a click. So you're making that title part of the click worthiness, or making it click worthy to attract that click, because click-through rate from the SERPs to your page is definitely a ranking factor. So the more people that click on your page, even if it's lower down, the higher the page will rank, so eventually you'll get to the top. And this is why pages can find that they get a ranking boost when they start sending paid traffic. So if you've started a Facebook ads campaign or a Google ads campaign, and you start sending traffic, you start getting people clicking on your site, then you can find that your rankings actually improve, because on what a visitor does on page will have an impact, as long as they're good things. Those user signals will have a good impact on improving the quality of the page, and therefore the rankings will go up as well. When those signals stop, they will tend to fall off, which is why people find that they find themselves in that quandary of, I'm paying for ads but now I'm ranking really well, so I'll stop that paid traffic and I'll just rely on the organic, and then their page was only really ranking on the user signals, which they've now stopped, so the page then starts to slide down, and then they don't understand why their page isn't ranking and they're not getting any calls, so then they don't have to fire up the pay-per-click and then everything starts working again. Whereas if you're actually tackling the underlying issue of making the page rank worthy in the first instance, then it will generally rank higher, and that boost from paid traffic, if that's a strategy, can help just to give it that little extra nudge. The next one is the H1 tag. There should only ever be one H1 tag on a page. I noticed that I think there's two on yours homepage, although one of them doesn't have anything in it. So I guess that's probably a quirk of the theme. But the H1 tag, again, it should have the keyword in it, and that keyword should be a call to action-y type, clickbaity type, grab the attention type element to that main keyword. And then you've got your H2s to your H4 tags. Now those are where you should be putting in very closely related words that are related to the main keyword. So there's slight variations of the keywords, and that's what goes in your H tags, your H2s, H3s and H4s, because Google look at those and they're looking to see what those signals are telling the page. Now I know when we look at your page, and the same happens with a lot of pages or WordPress themes, is that, so we've got the H2s here, we've got two of them here, and then we've got 5 H2s, and so these need to be all related to the keyword, which is Wedding DJ Cheshire. So passionate about music and a phone number isn't the best use of an H2. You've got, next one is okay. Your music and playlist for your wedding day, well, that's not really specific to a DJ. That could be anything, a band or whatever. So again, it needs to be a bit tighter. And then the gallery with the wedding DJ gallery, that's okay. And then latest posts, that's not really particularly relevant to the page, but unfortunately this is how the theme is using H tags to style it rather than using the CSS that they're supposed to be using. And then for H3 we can see here that it kind of gets even worse. We've got main pages, recent posts, contact me, a quote, then what next? That's no relevance to the keyword on the page. So it's fine to have that if that's, you know, part of the journey that you want to take the visitor through on the page, but just don't have it as an H3 tag, because it doesn't, you know, mean anything to, or doesn't add anything to the actual keyword phrase that we're looking at. So that's something that you can do, is look at tightening up these H tags. And then these H4s, usually I would say have one H4 and it should be the keyword with a call to action in it, so that they know exactly what to do next. So, you know, book your wedding DJ or wedding DJ Cheshire, book now, or, you know, whatever it might be. So we've got wedding lighting, the first dance, uplighting your wedding venue. Those aren't relevant to a wedding DJ in Cheshire. So then we could do a lot of tightening up here. In terms of, where's my page gone? So keywords should be in the first and last paragraph. It's a good idea to have it at least in the first and the last. Good idea to have it in a couple of more times, once as a bolded keyword and another one as an italicized one. And then you want to have it in the meta description. So I usually start off with my keyword wedding DJ Cheshire. Wedding DJ Cheshire. So I mean, normally I would have made my page the same as my main keyword. Some people will switch it around. It really depends on what's got the highest search volume. Whatever's got the highest search volume, I would send all my signals to that, and then I would use the variation or the alternative, if you like, the swapped round version in one of my H3 tags. So that's how I would get that variance and that relevance, so that I could still save these important places for my main keyword. And then here you want, as I say, you want your keyword, and you also want this to be a really good call to action. Get them to making it stand out. A good way of finding what works well in here is looking at other people's Google ads and seeing what sort of language that they use, and that's what I would put in there, a keyword followed by a Google ad or similar. And then having an image, that image needs to have the file name with the keyword in it. So wedding DJ Cheshire.jpg, and it also needs to have that in the alt text, and you also want to make sure that the image is the right size and is loading fast, so just to help with the overall search speed. More than one image is fine, but just make sure that you do have your alt tags and that again they're all relevant to the actual page. So I think here we've got, so this is relevant, that's relevant. Wedding music and playlists, that again is a little bit vague, could be to do with wedding music, wedding bands, not necessarily DJing. And then again we've got lighting higher, well that's a completely different search, so we don't want that confusing the page. And so on. If this is a local place in Cheshire, then that's a good thing to add to help with that local element, localization of the page. So, and then there's all this stuff down here, and this is where we get pages that are showing up for odd search terms, or we're finding that these pages are ranking for terms or not ranking as well as we want, because we've got Manchester Hall rooftop wedding. That's nothing to do with a wedding DJ in Cheshire, and so on. I don't know whether Tosside community is anywhere near Cheshire, excuse my geographical ignorance, but again all these things are distracting from what the content of the page is, because Google's looking at all this and saying, what's it all about, and all these recent posts and things like that. So you need to be really careful about what content you put on the page, and ask yourself, is that going to add value to my keyword that I want to show up for, or does it detract from it? And if it detracts from it and it's something you want to be found for, like wedding lighting, then it needs to be on its own page. So it might be that you need to, if you're hiring out lighting for weddings, then you would probably need to have a whole raft of pages about lighting, wedding lighting for Manchester, for Cheshire, for the Northwest, for whatever other areas it is that make sense for your business. So look at separating those things out. So just looking at site structure. So all of these pages, we need to have them on the page. Let me just turn this off. So we need to have a home page, an about page, contact page. I've lost my notes again. Terms of service and privacy page, and then anything else that we might need for GDPR. Now I noticed there wasn't a pop-up disclosure or disclaimer on your site when I went to it for the first time. So by law as a business you do need to have a GDPR compliant cookies pop up so that people can turn off, and if you're targeting this and you've got analytics on there, if you're targeting it or retargeting, if you've got pixels for Facebook or anything else on here, then you certainly anyway you need to have one, but if you've got pixels then you need to add those into your cookie policy, so you need to have that just from a compliance issue. Granted, the chances of the European Union stamping down on small businesses is farther remote, but there was a rather huge fine released not long ago on a big company for abusing their GDPR. So need to make sure. Can't see any terms of services or privacy pages. Might be tucked away. So that needs to be somewhere. Oh, here we go. We've got some. I knew I'd seen one somewhere. So we've got all these different menus, and so these are just wasting link juice. By that I mean that when you get links coming to a site, that then is then spread amongst all the other links on the page. So having all these additional navigation is just diluting all of that linking juice. So you're making the incoming links less valuable because they're being spread to more places. So I would certainly get rid of this, or get rid of this one and just put the cookie policy at the bottom. And again, the same thing with all these blog posts. They're just linking out and spreading that link juice around pages that you don't want to rank. And that kind of comes on to another issue of all these different pages. Are they really? I understand what they are. I mean, these are obviously where you've performed your wedding DJing and stuff. But I would be careful about how you use these pages, because when I looked at a few of them, they weren't particularly long posts. So we probably got less than 150 words, and then we've got some images, and a lot of this is going to be duplicate content. And so having thin content pages, and your analytics would be interesting for you to see how many visits these pages actually get, as to whether or not these are valuable on your site, because all the while you've got all this other stuff that's detracting from your main purpose of your website. You don't really want to be ranking for Tosside Community Hall, but that's an H2. So do you want to be, H2 is a powerful ranking signal, so you're telling Google on this page that it's about a wet and windy weather at Tosside Community Hall. So that's not really anything about DJs if this is your, so we need to be careful about how we're blogging. Personally, I'm not a great fan of blogging for local businesses. Far too often when I look at the pages or the keywords that they're ranking for, they're ranking for hundreds of informational type keywords that are completely irrelevant to the main topic of the site, simply because they were told long ago that it was a great idea to create content and that Google needs fresh and up-to-date content. That's not the case. All you need is a is a small, good business site, well optimized, one keyword per page, one keyword and location per page, rather than all the other stuff. Now, the other stuff might be good for visitors to show off how you're doing and what you do and how well you do it, but there may well and probably is better ways of doing that rather than having a blog. And so, as I say, you need to be careful about all the extra stuff that goes into a blog. Google doesn't like thin pages, so any blog should have at least 500 to 1,000 words to make it worthwhile having. You need to be careful about the sorts of words that you use in your heading tags, so only make sure that you use stuff that's not going to either compete with your main service pages or is going to make you show up for Tosside Community Hall, for example. So, and the other element of that is is the way that that WordPress works, and they create archives. Now, they create archives for category pages, for blog posts, for tags, for author pages, and for date archives. Now, all of those things are creating a duplicate of the original piece of content. So if you have a blog post and you have that blog post in a category and you have tags on that blog post, you will end up with 3 or 4 copies of that blog post on your site. There'll be one in the blog archive, there'll be one in the tag archive, there'll be one in the categories archive, and then there'll be the original blog post itself. So you've ended up with 3 duplicates. And so where you get a problem is especially when you've got thin content, pages with 150 words or thereabouts, and you've got that thin content duplicated 3 times and then indexed in Google, then you start to see that you get an awful lot of bloat. And then especially when you look at your analytics and you see that actually nobody's reading my blog pages. So it would be interesting for you to look at your analytics and pay particular attention to your blog posts and see how much traffic they're actually getting, and whether that traffic is then the sort of traffic that's then converting by turning into a phone call or a form inquiry. And if they're not, then I would perhaps look at maybe doing my blogging on my social channel, maybe leave it to Facebook, put these blogs on Facebook and then link to your Facebook page, or put them on Instagram. And you're probably already doing that, but I would keep them off of the website. And so with these, as you can see, we've got all these tags here, so these are duplicates of the other page. And then if you go for category, so we've got category weddings, other things that are being indexed which you probably didn't intend, were things like this PAT testing, 13 pages of a PDF of a 2018 PAT test report. I don't know whether or not you had to have that on your website, but it's been indexed. It's not the sort of thing that you want indexed. So it's okay to have it on the site if it's needed for evidence that you've got a PAT test in place on your equipment, but it certainly doesn't want to be indexed by Google. This is your category archives. So these are all the posts that are also in the blog archive and in the blog itself. So this is all duplicate content. And then this was another PDF that's I found indexed in Google, and this is a liability insurance for 2016-2017. So this probably again isn't the sort of thing that you want indexed in Google. It might be important to have it on the site as evidence to show that you are covered for insurance purposes, but Google doesn't need to know that, and so on. So there's lots of pages that you need to look at. Now, if you have Yoast Seo as a plugin on your website, you can use that to go through, and part of the setup of that is to go through and disable the indexing of certain types of page on your WordPress site. So you can disable category pages being indexed, you can disable tag pages, you can disable index images, you can disable the tags and the author archives and the date archives and so on and so forth. And that's always a good thing to do. Once you've done that, then what I would do is your sitemap will then change. So then you can go to Search Console and upload your new sitemap, and then over a period of time those old pages will fall out of the index, and instead of having however many pages it was in the index that you've got, which was nearly 600 pages in the index, then that will be reduced a lot. And what that will mean is that Google will be able to spend more time crawling the important pages on your website, because it's not got to go through and look at all these old tag pages and these old archive pages and PDFs that aren't relevant any longer. So when you're looking at your site structure, making sure that you've got the right pages, and only those right pages, service pages and so on, indexed in Google, makes for a lot leaner site that will rank better. And then coming on to the last couple of bits, we've got brand entity, and this is where I talked about before, about emulating what it is that brands do, so that you can get the benefit of Google trusting brands. And so you can simulate that by making sure that you have your brand name and your brand address and phone number and website and brief description of what you do plastered all over the web in as many places as you can. And one way of doing that is to claim all the different social profiles. You can go to a place called knowem.com, and when you go there, you'll see that there's about 500 or so different networks, profiles that you can register with, and so there's over 500 different social sites. And so what you can do there is you can register those sites in your brand name, and then you just put up a short article and your name, address, phone number and website, and that's it. And then a couple of things will happen from that. First of all of a sudden you've got a lot more links pointing back to your website from authoritative sites. The second thing is that Google will start to know who you are better because you're being talked about on the web. And thirdly, it means that your competitors can't create those profiles in your brand name and post rubbish stuff that you wouldn't want to be seen. So there's a number of good advantages to adopting that strategy. So what we need to do is look at Wedding DJ David Lee. If that's your brand, then that's what should be associated with this website and this brand. Or if it's the David Lee events, then that's what needs to be associated. So if we, let's just go back here and take this. So Control-C. This is a good test to see how well your brand is known in Google, and see what comes up. So what you want is your own website and your Google My Business, which is good. And then you want as many of these other things that you can down here. So you've done a pretty good job with these various sites here. They're also known as citation sites as well for local businesses. So you want to keep building those out. The other thing is that you want to make sure, to help you rank more in your Google My Business, is making sure that this information here, which is your address and phone number, exactly matches what you have on your website. And so the address that you've got at the bottom of your website and the address that you have on all of your other properties should match what Google has for you here. So it is slightly different. So we haven't got the unit 17 on here. So that's one thing I would look at. We haven't got Lancashire on your Google My Business. So I would look at making sure that that was an exact match of what Google has as your address and your brand name. So this is your brand name according to Google. And so that name and this address is what should be in the footer of all of your pages and on all of your social sites and other Web 2.0s and stuff like that. So that's what you want, and that will help you. Having that transparency between the two will help you rank better in the map packs. So there's a few other things, I'm not going to go into that now, but certainly making sure that there's consistency between what data is here and what's on your site will help you rank better in the maps, because Google isn't clever enough to know that that's probably the same as the other, or that that address is probably the same. You know, it's a computer, and so it looks at it and says, is that the same as that? Yes, it's a match. No, it's not a match. You know, when you're looking at your Google My Business, which is another important strategy to local marketing, then we can do things like citation analysis to look at all of those types of things as to see how you can improve the visibility of your Google My Business, because at the moment around about 50 to 60% of clicks are coming through the maps pack. So the more visibility you get in the map pack, the more likely it is that your phone's going to ring. And then the last thing I want to look at is speed. So the best place to check your speed is webpagetest.org, and you can choose where you search from. So the closest one to you is Nottingham, and I chose a 3G mobile signal on Chrome. And so for these figures here, you want a load time under 3 seconds. So this could be, it's almost twice as slow as it should be. The time to first byte, that should be between 0.3 and 0.5 seconds, and then start render time should be under 2 seconds, and the first paint should be under 2 seconds as well. So you could do well to improve your speed for your website. So there's a number of ways that you can do that, but if you do want some information, I'm quite happy to do a video for the group on how you can improve the speed of your website. But at the end of the day, it generally comes down to hosting. The better the hosting, the better the speed of your website, because first byte time is to do with DNS servers, how quickly your DNS is sending information, and then the start render time is about how quickly you're starting to get information back from your server. So if you've got a poor quality DNS server and poor quality hosting, then those two things are going to be severely impacted, and speed is an issue. The saving grace for a lot of local businesses is that a lot of competitors are worse. So it's kind of like you're there because everybody else is really bad as well. Whereas if people then, as they start to realise that they need to have faster sites to rank better, and people start improving their hosting, then it's better to be ahead of the game than to be playing catch up. So there's definitely some improvement that you can get here, which again, with all the other things I've mentioned, can help to overall speed up your page. So whilst these are the most important criteria, there are obvious other things that you can do, such as making sure that the images on the page are sized correctly. So if you want an image that's 800 by 600, don't upload an image that's 1920 by 1080, for example, and then let WordPress automatically size it down. If if you've got an image that's 4 megabytes, don't upload it knowing that you've got a compression tool on your site, a plugin like Smush, which is then going to compress it for you. Compress it first so it only goes up, and really you should be looking at images no more than 100 kilobytes per photo in an ideal world. So there's some, and video obviously, again, if video's heavy, even if it's hosted on YouTube for example, you've still got all that going toing and froing from the YouTube servers and things like that. So having video on your site can negatively impact your speed. But these are the most important things to look at to start off with. And then the last thing that I wanted to look at, even though I know I said it was the last thing last time, was, I've got it somewhere, structured data. Structured data testing tool is something that you can get from a Google. Oh, I know where I put it, over here. Here we go. So if you search for structured data testing tool, now structured data, if you don't know, is code that you put on the website which relates to a database of words that Google understands. So it's basically like a dictionary for Google. So when you use those words, it understands them better than if you don't. So it's a way of marking up your page to say to Google, this is a local business, these are the areas that it operates in, this is what it does, this is how much it charges, these are the other sites that are that we have, our Facebook, our Instagram, so on and so forth. These are where our reviews are, and so you can use structured data to get stars on your listings in the search results by having your reviews marked up. And so there's a whole host of things. I'll probably do a video for structured schema markup, but your site doesn't have it has the basics, which is probably from a plugin, but organization, really you want local business, and you want to make sure that it's more specific and it's got all the service areas and so on and so forth. So there are places that you can go online to, free places that you can use to create structured data that would be a lot more informative than what you've got here. So that would be a good start. Luckily, your competition doesn't have much in the way of structured data. I've got a report here which I'll send to you later. But so your competition doesn't have any schema either. So it's having these things that are important for ranking that your competitors don't, that gives you that leg up. And so by implementing schema data on your page, you can really help to get a boost. Now this is a tool called Page Optimizer Pro, which is a really good tool for looking at analysing pages. And so I did this for the Cheshire page, and so it's got several recommendations of what you can do to the content to be able to improve the rankings. For example, adding exact keywords to the H1. Remember, we didn't have the keyword on the Cheshire page anywhere other than in that title on that image. So these sorts of things it can go through and tell us what we need to do. When you're looking at the variations that you need to, or words that you need to use, then we get these are the variations related to Wedding DJ Cheshire. So these are the sorts of words that we need to be putting on the page. LSI words, these are the sorts of words that we should be using on our page to help explain to Google what it is that we do. So I'm going to leave it there because it's just under the hour, and I hope you found that it's useful. By all means, ask any questions in the group, because it will help others to understand their own situation better, and we can all learn from that and rank our sites better. So I wish you all the best, and I will speak to you in the group, no doubt.